if you're a head and neck cancer patient going through radiation, it's going to get painful. It's going to be hard to swallow. Do not avoid getting a PEG tube if you need one, because once you get it, like I mentioned before, all that pressure is taken off of you to get that food in orally and get that nutrition in.
That was a blessing, because eventually he was too weak and I would have to feed, hold it and pour it, and literally was feeding him through the feeding tube, because he was doing all he could to sit in the chair at the table in the kitchen.
I'd sit up and just fall asleep. I couldn't swallow, and early on I went ahead and got the feeding tube. The joke is we're members of the Second Billy Button Club, because now you look like you got two. But that was a real plus that I was able to go ahead and get it, because my throat shrunk so small I couldn't even swallow a green pea. And it was just strictly liquid the whole way.
The transition from feeding tubes to eating orally, regularly. The first time I had a feeding tube was in the year 2000, and it was a Dobhoff feeding tube, a little tube that goes in your nose, a little yellow tube down into your stomach. And I had that for about 6 or 8 weeks. Once I got the tube out, and this may happen with you, but I had forgotten how to swallow. I couldn't swallow, and it was very, very scary. So I started a little bit at the time. Everything I had was pureed. We also did a lot of juicing. We did a lot of juicing with carrots. I got a little bit in at the time, very, very small. Sometimes at first I would try to let it trickle down my throat. And as time went on, that got easier. But I would say for 3 weeks or a month after that feeding tube was removed in 2000, all of my food had to be pureed or liquefied, and slowly that got better. And then I had another feeding tube in 2014. I had a PEG tube because I had that recurrence and had a whole lot more radiation. Once that was removed, actually I was able to swallow, because with this in, I would put ice chips in my mouth. I would let the water go down. I mean, there were days that I didn't have anything orally. My medicines were crushed, but I did not lose my ability to swallow. So once this was out, again, I really tried to stick with soups, stews, very soft food, chicken noodle soup, shredded chicken. And I was able to swallow, but it took time to get back to, if I needed to chew something, to where I could do that and swallow it. I can eat solid food if I chew very slowly and take small bites, but I still avoid things like chicken, steak, and go more for things like casseroles, where the chicken is cut up or shredded, or meatloaf instead of meat that I have to chew up. Those things are easier to swallow.
The transition from the PEG tube to eating was an interesting road. The physician, the surgeon, wanted to be so careful as not to dislodge anything or to break loose any sutures. And I was ready to eat a cow from the ground up. So it was kind of an exchange of, you can have hamburger, but it has to be ground. You can have bread, it has to be wet. And that that slow transition was. We had some interesting conversations, the surgeon and I, with me telling him what I thought I was capable of and what he thought his work was capable of withstanding.